We're back, people, and today we're breaking down film on the Miami Dolphins run game. Okay, 3, 2, 1. We're back, people, and today we're breaking down film on the Miami Dolphins run scheme, and we're going to focus on how Mike McDaniel maximized this run game. Really took a focus, on using a lot of pre-snap shifts, motions, and then creating angles, leverage, number advantages for the offense. That's what the run game is all about, just creating angle advantages and having the number advantage in the box or to a side of the field. And Mike McDaniel, obviously coming from the Shanahan tree, has a lot of experience using these types of concepts. He did a great job of making things look very similar and then being slightly different concepts after all, or coming out in completely different formations, pre-snaps, different pre-snap looks, and then running the exact same run game concept. McDaniel is a mastermind when it comes to this type of stuff. And even coming from I expect this to even be better in 2023 because coming from San Francisco, he didn't really change too much of the run game concept. He added some wrinkles here and there, but he really took a focus just I think based on personnel. He saw the passing game, prowess that they would have based on their personnel, and he took that Niners offense and really expanded upon it and changed it pretty much a lot, becoming more of a vertical passing offense. But the run game was very similar. I think McDaniel didn't put as much time into it to try to change things. And even with not having the greatest personnel for the running game, O-line, the running backs are decent, not amazing players. They still had an effect on a lot of games, and there was games where they took over. So if Mike McDaniel puts a little more time in that, comes with some more variations, and tries to even become better than what Shanahan was doing, because I think he was better than Shanahan in the passing, prowess of this offense, but the running game side, Shanahan is definitely still the best in the NFL at that. So Mike McDaniel is a mastermind when it comes to this type of stuff, but there's areas where he can still improve and get better. This is a good example of how he would mix things up. A lot of times when he would have an off-ball tight end here, whether it's Engold or Durham Smythe, different personnel. He'd love to mix up the personnel so it would be harder for defenses to predict. But he'd love to either motion them across or not motion them. But then he creates this angle and gets him to cut off that defensive end. And he also does a good job of mixing things up. Because a lot of times when they do that, it's a lot of split zone, outside zone looks. But here they actually go to a gap scheme run. You can tell if you're not aware of what gap scheme is. Basically, you can tell that it's a gap scheme power run because Robert Hunt, the right guard, is pulling. If you got an offensive lineman pulling, he's pulling up into the hole, and he just creates this advantage for Engold. Everything's about timing. He snaps this right as he's getting right behind him, so Engold has the perfect angle to adjust here and cut off this defensive end. And then you just follow Robert Hunt into the hole while everyone else down blocks, and it creates this number advantage down in the box. Just great call. And he really, this Brown game was an absolute masterclass. I would say the Browns game, pretty much once they hit the Browns game and on, there was times where just the running game could take over if the passing game didn't need to. This was just a pure film study play. They didn't run, a lot of these types of plays, but coming out, basically, running a trap right up the field, it just caught this defensive guard. The Browns, he definitely watched, these defensive tackles, and they love to get aggressive, just shooting up the field. And they have him pulling out to block the defensive end, to leave this other defensive end unblocked. There's no motion pre-snap, which they run motion more than anybody, so when they weren't running motion, it would kind of throw defenses off a little bit. But look how much this creates this hole. But just having this, defensive tackle shoot up the field basically takes himself out of the play. Robert Hunt's supposed to, trap, take him out, but it just creates so much space to work up the field. Really excellent call. And he did a lot of this he would come out in those pre-snap looks that looks like the RPO, that play that I showed, the seam rail slide, and he used that to his advantage. That RPO was so important to this offense. I wanted to show this concept once where they do the behind the back. This is the one wrinkle I think McDaniel added the offense to the running game. The behind the back, which ended up becoming a pretty big part of the offense because they ran this a lot running play wise, and they used it to use play action. And a lot of times, defense would fall for this play action because they do not expect from shotgun, the quarterback to turn around and, face away from the defense when they do this. And you could see how he sets this up. He likes to have his receivers come in tight, and just based on, the pre-snap offense, this positioning right here is so important because it gives him the opportunity to crack back on Myles Garrett, and getting him just in this position right here, Sherfield just completely takes him out of the play. So good job using those angles, and then it gets this number advantage to the outside. All the receivers got to do is win some blocks, and it just gives Mostert a one-on-one with a DB, and he was punishing DBs throughout the year. And another, concept that I think, this is one McDaniel really put his number on because he really excelled using this one. This is one of like the base formation almost for that RPO that the Dolphins love to run. They come out in 21 personnel. They would either, have angled lineup as like a split tight end, but they have him in the backfield this time, which I think gives him the better angle because they were leaving Myles Garrett unblocked, the other defensive end, Clowney, unblocked a lot in this game, and, having them split zone block them. And here they come out, have Tyreek Hill motion across, which look how much it affects the defense. Pre-snap moves the linebackers as a play, creates a number advantage inside the box, and this is like the basic RPO look, but they're not. They're just handing it off the whole way. The RPO, they have like, this looks like it's going to be the seam. This is the rail route. The slide coming underneath. They have angled, look like he's going to be the slide defender, but he has now the perfect angle to just cut off, take Garrett out of the play. And with all that pre-snap motion, looking like just from angled moving this way, look what it does to this defense right here. 51 is like caught up, not even seeing the run play here to fill into this gap because he thinks that the fullback's going to just slide out into the flat. Tua is rolling out with it. He's got his eyes all caught up in the backfield, and then Angle takes that out and has all this room just work up the field. It's just beautiful work. Just from setting this up, like not even doing too much pre-snap, just with the one motion across. It's just all this setup whole season long. They've been running this RPO, this type of look, and then just coming out and running the ball. It had the Browns defense absolutely destroyed, and I love how he had him lined up in the backfield just based on this angle right here that he gets to take. It makes it so much easier to block Garrett because when he's coming from lined up like right off the tackle here, it's so much harder to get a decent block on this guy. A lot of times you see those guys whiff, especially because defensive ends are more used to getting that, and he just completely takes Myles Garrett out of the play. He's one of the best defensive ends in the NFL. I love this design from McDaniel here. He's got the off-ball tight end Smythe here, but then he also has angled almost like another off-ball tight end, but even another split apart, and they just motion him slightly pre-snap, and the timing of all this is super important. You get a nice 8-yard gain. Like it basically simulates almost having two pullers, but with like even they mess this up here. Like 71 I think reads this the wrong way because they're supposed to flow everyone to the right here, but the right tackle takes a false step. But look how they design this. Angled with the pre-snap movement, he has the momentum to carry this out and just be a step ahead of Smythe to kick out 44, and then allows Smythe to be like a lead blocker into the hole. It creates almost like this gap scheme type of feel with just having a tight end and a fullback pulling to fill this out. And a lot of times defenses are not expecting this. They'll usually see like a tight end come across either in motion. Dolphins do this a lot where the guy comes in motion, but a tight end and a fullback both like leading up through this. This is not something that you see very often. It definitely had the defense, a little worried, and then it just creates this opportunity. Everyone just does their job. Angled kicks out. He leads up through, and then Wilson works off of it, picks up a nice 8-yard gain. Really nice to see. I love this zone counter that the Dolphins decided to go with here. They run a lot of they have Sherfield here working on the jet motion across right as it passes Tua, but just the zone counter. Usually when they're running counter, you have a gap scheme, a puller working across. This they just have a tight end splitting across as like a lead blocker, and it's all just Tua here. He opens up as he's going to hand it off to this side with the counter step here. Everyone's flowing to the right side of the formation. Even with the motion, this is how you get everyone to flow away. All the linebackers get this, and then it has just the wide receiver crack down on the safety who has the best chance of making a play. And even though he doesn't get a good block on him, it still is enough to get out to the edge and pick up a nice 7-yard gain. Give Mostert a one-on-one with a DB out in space. You never know what could happen there, but just a beautifully designed play, mixing things up. Because when the Dolphins would do this, have a guy motion across, their most basic look of this would either be just running outside zone strong, weak outside zone to the opposite side away from the flow, or go with it. But this time they run like this zone counter. It was not something they did very often. It was nice to see McDaniel throwing these wrinkles to keep defenses off guard. I really like when the Dolphins just went kind of basic with it, just the regular jet motion across and then running outside zone, away from the motion. Here they get like the lead block. This worked pretty well with the Bills game. You can tell you just mix things up slightly throughout, these games. Versus the Bills, he liked to have, just go out and like, an ISO look here, lead back through the hole, and then they run this away. Just look at Tyreek Hill's motion. Look at the effect on the linebackers pre-snap. Everything bumps down, and then it puts a one-on-one. It puts this DB down in the box, and he has to, become this run fit guy, this nickel guy. It bumps everyone over, takes Poyer out of the play, gives Milano a false step pre-snap, which allows these two O linemen to get up and block them. just because of that slight movement, that so slight false steps, even though it was very subtle, not a lot, allowed him to get up in the hole. This DB doesn't want to get involved and take on angled in the hole, so he just drops his shoulder, takes himself out of the play, and it creates, this nice lane for Mostert to work through and, pick up a nice 13-yard gain. Just really effective work just from a little bit of motion, having a lead back, slightly different variations of the same look that they ran all throughout the year. I just loved how they used Ingold this year. I loved how they used him. He was basically their Kittle. Like, he was a mix of Kittle and Juszczyk from the Niners offense. If they had a Kittle-type tight end blocker, I think he would have put a lot more emphasis on the running game. They just don't have that type of guy. But look how they use him with the motions pre-snap, and it just creates the angles, and it's all about the timing. That timing with the snap, everything about it, it just creates the perfect angle to meet this guy into the hole here. It doesn't have to just be like, oh, I'm going to, line him up here and he'll be the lead blocker. But no, he gets to build momentum. You snap it right as he reaches the tight end, and he gets, to build this up because it's a slow, read at the mesh point here. Everyone else allows them to, get up to the level. Robert Hood does a great job getting up there and just gives Ingold momentum. And he's did a great job of blocking on the move this year. Very important on the Dolphins offense, and creates a nice, seam to work through there for Ahmed. Another example of McDaniel using angles to create those number advantages to one side of the field and, get upfield. Timing is so important. I think Tua that's a underrated thing I think Tua did this year with the offense, because a lot of the best running games came when he was at quarterback. And I think he just understood those little timings. You have to, especially in this McDaniel Shanahan type of running scheme, you got to be able to understand exactly when to get these snaps off with the motion, and Connor Williams as well. So they definitely had a high understanding of this offense from both sides of the, how they would run and pass. In this Packer game, they have these two plays I'm about to show you from this Packers game are going to build off each other. You got the motion across here from Angled. The timing of it creates, a nice block of that defensive end. And it's also another just like zone counter pre-snap. You see Tua and Mostert taking those counter steps. They time this up pretty well here. And look how they do this. Everyone's sliding down, and then Smythe, gets the second level to take on the linebacker while they leave this defensive end unblocked. And it just sets up a huge seam to be created. Mostert presses to the outside, does a good job setting this up as well. But then this also builds off another play later in this game, and that's why they ran the ball so effectively in this game. And we'll get into the next one right now. The next play, we get to see motion across. Looks like it's going to be the exact same look, but then they just go outside zone, and it just creates a nice crease for Mostert to cut back. You can see how it's just slightly different. They have the pre-snap, shift. Ingold works across here. They're both off the ball this time. Smythe was, over. They just switched sides. Smythe, off the ball as well, and now he's motioning across. You think they might go zone counter again, but this time, Angled, who was the Smythe guy, would usually block down, and while he would kick out the defensive end. But they both just, get to the outside and create a lane. They both, Smythe even whiffs his block. They leave two guys unblocked. They basically leave three guys unblocked until Sherfield is able to get the linebacker. He was a really big part of this running game as well. But they just go outside zone away from the motion, and it just creates a huge running lane back to this field, and it has this number advantage this side of the field, like basically 4 guys over here with, 5 guys to block. And even with, this 5 versus 4, and you can count this linebacker as well, but somehow Sherfield, the wide receiver who was on the other side of the field, is able to get over and help block, which created a huge lane. So just building those plays off of each other, that was not back-to-back plays. It was that was the second play. The first one was the second play of the game, and then there was a passing play, and then the fourth play of the game was this one, and they did a really good job building off of each other. Last play that I'm going to break down, we're going into, a little more of a trick play. This was towards the end of the season. This was, the last game of the regular season versus the Jets, and they ran a lot of 21 personnel, a lot of Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert on the field, and I just love how he sets these, plays up, things you're not expecting, even with, a running back to this side of the, deep out here, lined up at wide receiver. They have, Craycraft motioning across. They would pull this O-lineman. Usually when, a left guard like this, 65 pulls across, this takes all the eyes of the linebackers. You can see how it affects this right here. They both come down, and then now you have Craycraft and then Connor Williams sneaking out. Not like an obvious pull as the other one. So it's just a great job of using your offensive linemen to just pull the keys, because they're keying these guards a lot. So just look at this. You have the motion, but they always motion across with the wide receivers or tight ends. Teams know not to get too caught up with it, And then look at this. They have the right guard pull across, and this gets these guys to all commit down. And then Connor Williams sneaks out without really pulling and just creates all these eyes. And even with 57, coming out to this side, now his eyes get caught in the backfield. And you have all this out here, everything to work out in space. Everyone does a pretty good job blocking as well and picks up, a 20-plus yard gain. Mostert obviously does a great job finishing his runs, especially when he has the momentum built up out in space. Just another beautiful play call for McDaniel. Really going through this. I think he did a really good job with the running game. Definitely, I think the running game can be improved. I don't think the problem was with his schemes or the concepts or anything. The biggest problem is he would just maybe go away from it at times in games. He could have ran the ball more, and that was a problem at times, but sometimes the running game just wouldn't work just due to personnel, and the passing game was more effective. That's why I think he stuck with it, and he feels like, from an analytic perspective, like the passing game is more effective, like overall, and it leads to better chances of winning. But from a film perspective, sometimes you got to be able to show these running concepts to keep these defenses honest because they're not, respecting it. So, I think we'll see an improvement on this next season from McDaniel, and it was something, definitely to, not be too mad about for a first season. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.